Year 12. It is now Thursday, the 25th of June, and I'm not at home. I am in the common room. It does feel quite strange, doing this assembly without you all being here as well. It also feels quite strange because the last time I was in this common room was that Friday 3 months ago before the school closed and the sixth form closed, when year 30 it was pretty hectic, wasn't it? It is great to be back, but it does feel quite odd, and I can't work out if the last 3 months have flown by or they've gone really slowly. It does feel too early to be in the year to be June, the 25th of June. But it is what it is. So what I'd like to do today is think about the A-level mindset, particularly as you're getting feedback from teachers from your progress checks. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the A-level mindset. Then I'm just going to mention briefly some kind of key deadlines before I'm going to hand over to Joey and Eric, who are going to talk about subjects of fear and well-being tips around that topic. And so it's actually just takes only 10 minutes, but it's taken from a 60-minute podcast style chat. I'm sure if you wanted the rest, you could get in contact with Joey. Eric was a student with us about 5 years ago, if I remember correctly. An amazing student who offers some really good ideas in the contribution a bit later in the assembly. So on the subject of fear, I suppose, what I'd like to talk about briefly is something we introduced you to at the beginning of the year, and the importance of having an A-level mindset and the certain skills and attitudes that link in with that you need to develop and you need to work on to really thrive in your A-levels. And some of these, of course, are even harder as a result of the last couple of months. So skills like revision, research, communication, interdependence, organization, and then the attitudes of aspiration, really aspiring for a particular course, a unit to study a particular course at university or a particular grade, inspiration, where you're going to get your inspiration from to have those aspirations, perspiration, working really hard to achieve that, and the resilience, the grit. I know all of you have needed that in the last couple of months, that grit to keep on going when it seems like everything is up, is against you. So what determines success at A levels? So this is, as I've said, really tricky time for you. A levels are hard anyway, let alone the impacts of COVID-19 and the fact that you haven't had face-to-face teaching for the last 3 months. It is therefore, I think, more important than ever that you have this belief in a growth mindset. If you work hard, you can improve your level of ability rather than having a fixed mindset. Students therefore should put themselves in challenging situations like the progress checks, for example, and work your way through them, listening to feedback and acting on it. Failure is an opportunity to grow and as a result behave in a different way in a learning environment. So that's why I suppose we still felt the need to put the progress checks on, because it's so important that you are giving yourself a kind of a test to see where you're up to, knowing that the chances are it's not going to go completely to plan. The A levels are 2-year courses. It does take time to grow in confidence with them. So please don't be too hard on yourself if the progress checks didn't go completely to plan. It's also really important, that you embrace these challenges rather than seeing them as threats. And also the research suggests you need to have a long-term goal, and where possible commit and stick to that long-term goal. So that could be grades for a particular course at university. It could be a set of grades to be able to access some apprenticeship opportunities. But having a long-term goal is going to be really helpful. So that's why, with Miss Isaac and all the input we've got from a progression point of view over the last couple of weeks, it is important that you have to take the time to reflect on that. Dave, did you want to say anything to the year 12s? I'm just doing an assembly contribution. Dave, nothing? Say hello. Hello. Oh. Okay, thank you, Dave. So just thinking about progress checks then, everybody, not just actually school, work, life, everybody trips. What matters most is which way you fall. Mistakes are information. This is, all the research that John Maxwell's Falling Forwards book presents. And I think it's really helpful. knowing that we all fall at times, whether it be the progress checks and things haven't gone completely to plan, or we do other things that, that maybe don't go to plan and we need to learn from. It's so important at the moment, and I mentioned this to you in September, that when it comes to, I don't know, feedback from teachers, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't blame yourself, or maybe teachers, you know, see where possible, what responsibility can you take for the outcome, and where possible, how can you learn from mistake? Let's say your, I don't know, history assessment didn't go completely to plan. What can you learn from the feedback? And if you don't understand the feedback, do go to your teachers to find out, more, and to understand that feedback. You can still do that, and you can still have that contact at the moment. Obviously via email and face to face, unfortunately. Although, many of you are able to be in school in a couple of weeks. You might want to be thinking about now, questions you've got, things maybe you haven't understood along the way, and write them down. So when you come into school, you can ask those things, or email them in advance if you don't want to wait until a couple of weeks' time. And in maintaining a positive attitude is so important where possible. Maintaining a positive attitude, realizing that things have been tough, haven't they, for the last couple of months. A levels are tough anyway, and it does take time to grow in confidence, and we don't expect anyone to get it straight away. And these progress checks might have gone, nowhere near where you want them to go, and you might have, the most important thing is you're learning from them, you're taking on board the feedback to make progress. And that might not happen immediately. It usually doesn't with A levels. It usually does take time, but that is the most important thing at the moment with those progress checks. So in terms of deadlines, we've got the EPQ deadline that I know we mentioned last week. If you're doing EPQ and you are, you need to respond to the teacher feedback by Friday, so that's tomorrow. You do need to, so thank you so much to the vast majority of you now completed that survey that I asked you to do last week by tomorrow. I think about 85% have done it, something like that. I'm hoping by the time this assembly goes out, it's higher than that. But by Friday, if you haven't completed the survey, please do. If not, I will be in touch with you. And finally, you should have registered for UCAS. If you haven't yet, though, please do so. We expect everybody to register for UCAS just to keep all your options open. So now I'm going to hand over to Joey and Eric, who are going to offer some excellent ideas about managing fear, which I know, we've all had that fear in a variety of different ways over the last couple of months. But I'm thinking about I'm thinking about A levels as well. They offer some really good advice. So hopefully you find that helpful. Have a great week.
Okay, hello everybody at Redcliffe, particularly the Redcliffe sixth form students in year 12. It's Chaplain Joey here, and I'm here with a friend of mine who I'm going to let him introduce himself.
I am Assistant Chaplain Eric Adu. I've been helping Joey out at Redcliffe since September last year.
What Eric's failed to mention about himself is he's also a former student and former, someone who spent 7 years at Redcliffe and had a big impact on the school. We're just going to have a chat and see where it goes, and hopefully there'll be things in this that you lot can learn from us and also apply to yourself. So, Eric, what's prompted this discussion? What do you want to talk about, like the idea behind, why are we talking about this?
Well, from our own personal discussions, we've tapped on the topic of fear quite a lot, and I think that is due to all the things that have happened this year, on a global level and obviously on a personal level as well. And it just feels like this has been a year where a lot of fears have come to the surface, and I just think it's important for us to talk through it and to figure out what we can do to not be held back by our fears, our fears of what's currently going on, or the fears of the future, and just recognize that fear is something we all deal with, and it's a shared human experience, and we can apply tools to overcome those fears one by one.
Yeah, it's interesting, thinking about this time that we're in, and the amount of things that have brought out fear in people. particularly during this lockdown.
Mm.
I kind of think, although I'd like to talk about that, the question that's actually coming into my mind, which is a bit out of the kind of left field, is when did you first know the feeling of fear?
Yeah.
Do you know when you first felt that?
When I first felt fear, it must have been, around the age of like 4, 5, and I always had a fear of the dark. And now I'm older, I realize that that was just the fear of the unknown. When the lights are on, you know what's there, you can figure out your way around things, and you feel confident that you can see what's coming. But when you're in the dark, like physically and also, metaphorically speaking, you're unaware. You don't know what is coming.
I think for me, like I'm struggling to remember, but I know that like dogs was an issue for me.
Right.
Again, shout out everyone who struggled with dogs.
Yeah.
I think there was a situation where one of my brothers was bitten by a dog, and then there was just a number of situations where dogs like jumped up at me or chased me, and I just remember I remember that feeling because occasionally now I still feel it, even though I've come a long way with dogs.
Yeah.
Done some good exposure therapy, walking dogs, and being, trying to familiarize myself, let them, lick me and smell me and stuff. But ultimately, that feeling of wanting to run and wanting to just
That's it. Like what you touched on there as well is the fact that, exposure to the thing you're taught to fear dispels those fears, because you actually get to understand what that thing is, or who those people are, or what that environment is.
What do you reckon, what do you think as you kind of moved into secondary school became the things that became bigger fears, or what was that like for you in that journey of secondary school, like dealing with fear and stuff?
For me, it was quite a unique experience because the primary school I went to was a majority white primary school. So I never really grew up around black people. And when I went into secondary school, there were so many black people. And I was so excited because it's like finally I can be around people who look like me and come from a similar background to me. But I didn't realize how much that came with. There was so many things that I didn't understand about hanging out with a group of black boys or a group of black girls. Like there was so much lingo and culture that I wasn't exposed to. So there was this fear of having to learn in the space of like weeks what they had learned over the span of years, and having to look like I fitted in, even though I knew I really didn't. And that just came with a lot of like personal like insecurity as well, because ultimately the older you get, the more you want to feel like you belong and that you fit in rather than stand out. And I really stood out because I came from a completely different background, and like there was so many demands that were placed on me to be a certain way and to know this and to know how to talk in this way, and I just didn't have it like that. And so that was a massive fear, and I guess a fear of rejection kicked in as well. It's really in hindsight, looking back, that I can see what was going on. But I guess the older I got, the more I began to understand that I was different for a reason, and that my uniqueness wasn't my weakness, that I could actually use it. And
I think what's coming up in me now is that reminder that actually these fears that can go long into adulthood, they can start in the classroom, in the playground, and that's deep. I do think like facing your fears is like one of the biggest, cliche quotes out there. But it's a cliche for a reason, because it's how people have found their way. But you don't just go straight from, not engaging with that thing at all to just going full ham. You have to find the gradual journey and the people who will walk it with you. And I think patience is quite key for yourself, having patience with yourself, and then having the patience of others. So that's my thoughts.
Sip, don't gulp. That's my saying. That's it, man. In life, you got to exactly sip and don't gulp.
Maybe we'll just both share kind of a message for year 12. So I think I think my message for year 12 at the moment, for you lot listening, is visualize how do you want to kind of do year 13. You know, one of my big regrets from school is that I wasn't more courageous, that I lived in fear. And actually, like, that would just be something that if I could say to you lot as individuals, if I could talk to you about your story, I'd say, right, think about what are the things you want to do, what are the things that would stop you do that, right? Try and visualize doing those things. If you want to, you know, say something in assembly, then visualize yourself doing that. Make that kind of a goal. If you want to like establish some new friendships, kind of expand your friendships, do that. If you want to press into a new skill or a hobby, do that. If there's a subject that you're feeling just proper negative about, figure out how can you flip that a bit. So it's just try and visualize how you want to kind of come out of year 13. And obviously it won't be perfect. It won't be exactly maybe as you imagine, but I personally find having some goals and having a bit of a sense of how I want to approach things can be helpful. And then at the same time, having a grace for myself as I struggle through it as a human and as I imperfectly go about my story. So that's kind of my kind of tip to you lot, is sort of try and just visualize how you want year 13 to be and make some points.
Yeah, that's sound, man. I wish I heard that when I was back in year 12. So I would definitely, you know, echo that if you've got a desire to do something and to see yourself in a particular role, go for it. You know,
Yeah.
Don't feel scared. Like, again, like your dreams are on the other side of your fears. You know, like, just go for it. Don't let those fears hold you back, because you want to be able to look back and feel proud that you did it anyway. And ultimately, you can't regret it if you were trying. If you were making an effort, you can't regret it. I think real regret comes when you don't put in the effort in the first place. You know, if you try and you fail, you haven't failed because you tried. So I think just go for it, man. Like, Joey just gave you very sound advice. And actually, one thing I should say is that Joey did mentor me through sixth form, and he gave me a lot of solid advice back then. And I don't think if I didn't have his voice back in those years, I couldn't have imagined making it through and becoming the man I am now. So I think just listen to your chaplain, take that advice, and definitely, man, plan for year 13 and execute. Don't be afraid to execute.
So yeah, thanks for listening. We may do more of these, but for now, we're just really glad to be able to share with you. And yeah, we hope you enjoy the rest of this assembly, this day, and this life.
Peace.
All right. Bye-bye.